Kids to stay safe.
Our drought intensified due to a precipitation deficit over 2 decades. Straight ahead, the dent this season has made.
After days of being survivor from seeing the boy, but the crash is still under investigation.
Utah snowpack usually peaks right about now, and while hydrologists still are not quite sure when that'll happen in the days ahead, they're getting a better idea of just how much water the snowpack will yield. News specialist Jed Bull live for us to show us what that means for our communities. Hi, Jed.
Hey, Mike. You know, last year Utah's snowpack had already peaked because we had so little snowfall. But this year, it may still grow if it snows again next week. Regardless of when that peak occurs and runoff begins, Jordan Clayton, the Utah Snow Survey supervisor, has a good idea of how much water the snowpack will yield within a range. He just finished the April Water Supply Outlook report. The snow water equivalent averaged across the state right now is 30 inches, which smashes all previous records. Here's another interesting calculation he shared. Over the last 2 decades, our state fell into a precipitation deficit because we had below average rain and snowfall too many years.
It looks like we're going to be cutting as a state those precipitation deficits by about 90%. Some areas of the state, they go away altogether. Some areas of the state, there's going to be some lingering deficit, but that's a tremendous difference that 1 year can make.
Clayton tells me small and medium reservoirs will fill, and the larger reservoirs may come close and even fill. Bear Lake is likely to come up more than 7 feet, and excess water will help raise Lake Powell and the Great Salt Lake. He says it will take another good snowpack year to start to fill those larger bodies of water, but nobody could have predicted a year quite this beneficial. Now, as the weather warms up, the flood potential will rise. Coming up at 6:30, a National Weather Service hydrologist shares what we need to know about this weekend warm-up. For Live at 5, I'm Jed Bowl.
Jed, thank you. Flood concerns causing Logan.
Last coming up in the full forecast.
All right, thanks, Kevin. New tonight, the man accused of a deadly shooting just outside the Salt Palace Convention Center has been ordered to stand trial. Police say back in September, 18-year-old Nagawit Kug shot and killed a man from Florida during a fight outside of a sneaker convention. Will stand trial for murder and aggravated robbery charges, both of those first-degree felonies, which, if convicted, each carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. And a Harriman man is next for the economy.
With a weekend warm-up ahead, flooding concerns are rising. Coming up at 6:30, a hydrologist shares his perspective on why this warm-up is needed.
You're watching KSL News at 6.
Utah's snowpack peaks in the first week of April, and why hydrologists aren't sure exactly when that will happen in the days to come. They are getting a better idea of how much water is in that snowpack.
News specialist Jed Bull shows us what that means for our communities.
We already know that this year's snowpack and snow water equivalent are record breakers. With a weekend warm-up ahead, though, plenty of people are concerned about flooding. But the hydrologists tell me this first warm-up is needed.
This warm-up is exactly what we need this time of year.
Now that Utah has record snowpack, Glenn Merrill, a hydrologist with the National Weather Service, tells me it's time for that snow to melt and flow into our streams and reservoirs as orderly as possible. If the low, then mid, then high elevation snowpacks melt sequentially, that's the best case scenario.
We don't want it to come all out at the same time. And next week's warm-up is not a situation where we're going to be melting anything but really the low elevation snowpack.
Then the weather should cool.
This warm-up is in our favor next week because we want to bring it like a stair step. We want to warm up, bring a section down, then cool off, lock it back up.
Ideally, each warm-up would be a little warmer, extended through May and into June. Some mid-elevation creeks like Emigration Creek, Parley's Creek, and City Creek will rise next week, but not flood.
We're not there yet. Again, this is exactly what we want, and we want that water flowing.
The statewide snow water equivalent is 30 inches, smashing the record set in 1983.
We're in uncharted territory right now. We've broken all the previous records, going back to, again, the early 1930s when we started measuring snowpack in a quantitative way in Utah. All of those records are now surpassed.
When the high elevation runoff begins, Merrill tells me the volume of water coming down the creeks will be 2 times what normally flows. So communities are preparing for potential flooding.
If you believe you live in a flood-prone area, then it's time to start preparing, and sandbags are available.
So this warm-up shouldn't cause too many problems. Hopefully the weather prolongs the runoff over several months. For KSL-5 News, I'm Jed Bowl.
Jed, thank you. Sandy City is reminding residents